I'd love to say this with Alan here. That was one of the most fun. That was the most fun journey I've ever been on. It creatively. Oh my God! Just the night that I printed out all the scripts, and I thought my printer was going to break because it's 50 pages, but it's also 350 pages of script. Just an absolute joy. And a beautiful hiatus, actually, from dreary black and white 17th century New England. You know, I get to draw the pyramids in color. You know, it was a very welcome departure from that. It was funny because I got a note from Alan's marvelous assistant Joe saying, do you have the time or interest to do 50 pages for the Great Enchanters? And this was phrased, perfectly, but in my head I couldn't allow myself to believe for one instant that I'd just been given 50 pages. I thought, well, he's given me one of them. Maybe it's John D because he knows I like drawing bearded people with, with diamond pane windows. Maybe I'm one of the artists to do one of the 50. I think I've been given all of them. No, that was sheer bliss. I was so sad to be done with it.
I would also add to that. People go down the stairs here. There's a drawing you've done of a boat trip called Three Men in a Boat, and this is a strange Thames voyage in which Stephen McNeely and myself and Manuel Swedenborg are on this strange boat. And it's the culmination of the very long history, of how Swedenborg himself came into London by slipping ashore on the Isle of Grain and getting to Gravesend and then taking a boat into Wapping. And we've done all the physical walking across the Isle of Grain and everything, come to the point of doing the boat journey, and it never happened. And then it happened as an image. And in a way, that's wonderful, it's done. It exists because of your imagination in a way that you then physically don't have to do. This is an extraordinary thing. In a way, all the research and preliminaries lead up to the point of the work itself being made. And when the work itself is made, the world has changed. It has happened. I mean, I dreamed that voyage that you pictured, the demons floating around in the sky. Okay, that's happened. Great, it's done.
Will you make that journey? Or you
No,
you don't have to now? Okay.
I have made it already in lots of different ways.
Yeah.
The one way of doing it specific to this particular story, in a sense, I don't feel any obligation to do. I mean, plotting of it, in my sense, was I thought it was really important to try and do it on one of the rafts, inflatables that immigrants cross the channel in, because we honour Swedenborg as this great figure, but he basically was an illegal immigrant. He smuggled himself in. He also broke the prohibition that was on the boat because there'd been plague in Sweden. Anybody who set foot from one of these boats was going to be hanged. But because he was well connected and bishops in the family, he was let off and he was caught. But actually acquired, there's a car park in Dover. There's miles and miles and miles of rigged boats that have been confiscated from people that have come across the channel, and they're just left there like a ghosts. And every one represents a voyage with hundreds of people in the most dangerous way. And I thought, well, what we should do is get hold of one of those and reenact the Swedenborg voyage and come in. So we'd have been arrested for sure, and then the whole story would take on a meaning that brings the contemporary into, re-evaluates the past, which is what we're essentially doing all the time. Because we are written out of that past, and we're just passing it on. And I'm so pleased to use in the book a quote from W.B. Yeats as a vision: the living can assist the imaginations of the dead, which is a tag I had at the front of my book, Ladid. This is what it was always about. It's a sense that you make the physical journeys to put yourself in the spirit of the journeys that have already been made. And it's a sort of Swedenborgian aspect of a doubled world in which we here are the ghosts of other higher entities. And Emerson, the philosopher who's connected with these
Yeah.
characters, and didn't. I think Longfellow and Hawthorne were rather sneering about him, this prose style.
Hawthorne was.
And he of course wrote about Swedenborg in one of his books, and I thought there was which book was it? It's called Representative Men. One of them is Swedenborg. He writes about. And he says, all things subsist and do not die, but only retire a little from sight and afterwards return again.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very, very good. And the other thing that grabbed me was when you have Lovecraft appearing and calling up the unnameable story. Obviously, this is also like he did it ahead of Beckett. Beckett's Unnameable ends with this great thing. Perhaps they have carried me to the threshold of my story before the door opens on silence. I thought, whoa. And all of those things kind of emerge out of reading your book and seeing these connections. And this is the way that basically Alan writes, and Michael Moorcock, who is also fabulously on the threshold of Edwardian and Victorian literature. He's totally absorbed in those popular forms and brings it through into with like our Jerry Cornelius characters into the world of the Vietnam War and the 60s, all that Alan is now writing about in the 60s. And so his tradition is the kind of founding font of all of this.
And Emerson shows up in More Way, where he pats Longfellow on the back after Hawthorne's funeral and says, "There is no death. We do not die," and
Exactly.
takes that
we're
right
honoring, we're honouring that particular spirit by
Yep.
doing it here. So I mean, I couldn't believe this was your only English launch.
Yeah.
I mean, the characters also, Hawthorne, Melville, all these characters actually, and Emerson came to London. I mean, it was still a dual culture really, and to England and France. I mean, in an open way that now would be difficult.
Yeah. And Dickens came to
America,
Boston and walked all over Boston with Longfellow. So, and there's records of what they saw, all the strange street preachers and things happen. Yeah.